Much for joining us today. As we talked about during our last coffee chat, so many people were very much interested in artificial intelligence. So we decided to have a session just about artificial intelligence today. And I'm very, very glad to welcome Dr. Nikos, who will speak about artificial intelligence. He's a leading expert in this field, and I'm more than sure that we'll get a lot of very important information on this. As you remember, if you have been participating in our previous sessions, but I will just repeat the rules. Basically, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and then we will discuss these questions after Dr. Nikos is done with his speech. You have also, while registering, some of you have submitted questions. I have made sure that these questions were well received, and we will try to review these questions along the way as well. So once the talk is over and you still have questions, you can either raise your hand or just put it in the chat box, and we'll try to go over as many questions as possible. So thank you so much, and I would like to welcome Dr. Nikos now.
Thank you very much, Nare. It's a great pleasure. CEEMAN is my favorite community. It's always very forward-looking in terms of the work that we do, but also a very warm community from a sort of human connection point of view. So it is always an enormous pleasure to join these events. I'm grateful, of course, for the long-standing collaboration. So 2 years ago, in the spring of 2003, the EdTech seminar at BLED was on AI, of course. And if I remember correctly, we spent all of our time trying out prompts on how to develop curricula, course content, and things like that. And so this is to emphasize that CEEMAN has been at the forefront throughout the last few years since generative AI and ChatGPT came around. And we're also planning this year's EdTech seminar in November, and we will have a word or two to say about that toward the end. Now, as far as my work is concerned, I have been teaching digital transformation, enterprise systems, social media for many years at my school in Athens. Most of my work is in executive education and in terms of degree programs, the MBA and the executive MBA. And the last couple of years, every corporate client of ours in executive education asks for content related to generative AI, whether it is explaining the technology or strategizing regarding AI, and a lot of the work is on understanding prompting as a sort of stepping stone toward getting the members of a company, of an organization, to start experimenting and learning and start innovating. So this is the background. I have prepared a few slides just to motivate our conversation here. And Nare was very kind to share some of the questions that you sent here over the past few days. And I have made that list in the end, and I can share my initial reaction to your questions. One thing to remember is that even though we are already nearly 3 years, 2.5 years, 2.5 years into generative AI, and even though during those 2.5 years, the progress has been stupendous, has been extraordinary. Every couple of weeks, there are new systems, new versions, new capabilities that are surprising everybody. Despite all of that progress, we haven't seen anything yet. There is a lot more technological evolution ahead of us, and there is even more social, organizational change in how our institutions, universities are going to work, and how our own individual work is going to transform. So what I'm trying to say is that we do not have all the answers. We have more questions than we have answers, right? And this makes it for a great subject for this event, for this coffee event. Okay, so let's dive in. Um, the broad picture is that generative AI has been around for a long time. Generative AI became popular with ChatGPT, as we know, and now we have lots of tools. It is actually transforming every aspect of learning and education. Um, and it, and even though initially we at the universities we saw it as a threat, and it remains a threat in many ways. You know, students cheating in their assignments, or the risk that students and everybody sort of losing our critical faculties if we rely too much on the technology. Uh, Ultimately, it is up to us to take control of this technology, stay on top, um, and use it as an opportunity to sharpen our uh, uniquely human abilities in critical thinking, evaluation, and so on. In terms of learning per se, the technology provides tremendous opportunities beyond the obvious, for much greater personalization, interactivity, but also performance impact monitoring and measuring. We have not been historically very good at measuring the impact, the practical impact of our educational efforts, especially when we talk about higher level skills like emotional intelligence or negotiations, coaching, etc. Um, but now I think there is at least an opportunity, not proven yet, but an opportunity to do that more effectively. Um, with Gen AI as a tutor or co-tutor, co-instructor, learning can move outside the classroom, out of campus, and can become on demand when needed on the job. And this is another threat as well as an opportunity at the same time. Okay. And lifelong learning actually takes a new meaning, a more important meaning in practical terms today. Um, so let's start diving in on some of the topics. How is our role as educators evolving? Well, uh, I'm sure you have noticed in your engagement with Gen AI that the more you're using it, the more you need to be the expert who is managing the assistant or the co-worker, okay, the colleague, the AI colleague. So our work as educators becomes a meta, goes a level of abstraction up, becomes we become meta educators in a sense, because we will be spending more time designing the learning experience than delivering the content. Okay, so we'll spend more time designing, orchestrating, bringing the learners and the technology together in different contexts, in different settings, um, uh, and orchestrating this dance, if you like, between in-person instruction and technology-enabled instruction. Not to mention, of course, that there's a huge productivity potential in terms of admin work for our admin colleagues at the university. Okay, the opportunities there are enormous. But also, if you think about it, our work as educators, a huge proportion of the work that we do is dealing with the university bureaucracy or whatever that means. Okay, and so whether it's accreditations, reporting, things like that, a lot of that can be streamlined, and there's a huge productivity potential there. This, of course, will require investment, uh, first of all, in human capital, in skills, but also in some technology infrastructure, depending on the size of our institutions and the resources that we have available. This is going to be important and something that we ought to discuss today. Now, there are, depending on your experience, that we have increasingly more and more interesting examples of how we can use Gen AI to innovate our educational process. Our aspiration for the EdTech seminar in November is to make it a sort of a shared experience where everybody comes along and everybody shares their experience, the experiments, and the innovations they have done. I cannot claim to have all the ideas or to have encountered all the ideas. But for example, there is a lot that we can do in terms of enabling of using AI in a supportive role to enable our students to sort of use the AI for the revisions or to have things explained, etc., etc., or to develop simulations, role plays, such educational experiences that we have been using for many, many decades, but now we can actually develop them really fast and really easily using Gen AI. We can use Gen AI to analyze student work, or we can record student role plays, and then we can use AI to do the thematic analysis and the sort of evaluation of those interactions, those oral interactions that can be recorded, transcribed, and analyzed. And then we can use this in learning feedback loops. And these are some of the sort of top level general ideas about how we can exploit Gen AI. And as I said, it seems that one big trend is that Gen AI will be the real-time, on-demand coach at work. And so this means that a lot of the teaching that we are currently doing on campus will move inside the workplace, where our MBA students or executive education participants will be learning. And this may be seen as a threat, again, but always also as an opportunity for us to actually develop, provide, and support this kind of service. Now, there is a huge gap between what students are eager to do with the use of Gen AI, what some of us, academics, are able or trying to achieve, and the strategic or coordinated deliberate efforts that our universities and business schools are making. So by and large, and I hope things are better where you work, where you come from, but by and large, universities and business schools have been very slow in investing, in bringing together the human capital, the skills necessary, and in encouraging innovation with Gen AI. For the most part, we have trying to defend against cheating, which is a real problem, but it's the least of the issues that we are facing, and it's the least of the opportunities that we have ahead of us. So I'm curious to hear from you whether you are actually teaching Gen AI in your programs and to what extent. This is number one. Number two is to what extent yourselves and your colleagues in other subjects, in finance, economics, entrepreneurship, strategy, marketing, etc., are actually adopting Gen AI in the classroom, in the coursework, in some way. And this would probably, hopefully, make for a very interesting discussion. And our objective is not to lose ourselves, not to surrender ourselves to AI. Our objective is to take control of that technology and exploit it in a forward-looking, value-added way, which means that we need to raise our own game. We need to invest in our skills, in our thinking, to come up with new learning models, and so on. This is the point I was making earlier. One of the reasons why it is imperative for us at business schools, inside business schools, to incorporate Gen AI in everything that we do with our students is because the workplace is changing. Okay? It's because jobs are changing. So if we continue to claim, as all of us do, that we are preparing the leaders of business or the executives and the managers and so on, then we are at a moment in time where that if we do not uh, give them the tools and if we don't teach them how to work with AI, how to take advantage of this technology, then we won't they won't be grateful when our students, I mean, our graduates won't be grateful when things at their workplaces change dramatically, start changing dramatically. Okay. Again, uh, we do not have all the answers as to how work will change, but we know it is changing and it will change, and therefore we need to sort of try to keep pace. Um, One of the conversations in this context is whether learning will be largely self-directed or the instructor, the educator will continue to have a significant role. Um, I think it will be both. Uh, and the educator will have the most significant role in designing and orchestrating the blend of self-directed learning with technology alongside the co-present um, learning in person. Um, every experiment, every insight, every experience so far indicates that it is too easy to fall into the trap of surrendering to the system. And we need that input. And part of the reason we need the educator and a team of experts, in fact, to design those systems is because we do have all those ethical and other issues that come under the label of responsible AI. Okay, so we need to safeguard our assessments, and we probably need to reinvent different kinds of assessment. Uh, More importantly, we need to do a lot of quality assessment, quality evaluation of the tools that we give our students to go after untruths that those systems occasionally produce, so-called hallucinations. Uh, but perhaps more importantly, an even bigger problem in the end of the day, perhaps, is bias, embedded bias and hidden bias. As those systems become, as they improve, they become a lot better at not hallucinating. And by training them properly and by injecting the right documents and material, then we can almost practically eliminate hallucination. But bias is really sort of hidden in everything that those systems train on, but also in a lot of the material that we provide into them. So we need to be mindful of that. So that's a new set of skills, if you like. And finally, if I may, real quick, I've overstepped my allocated time, but if I may really quick go through the questions that Nare shared with me the other day. Um, Potential fields of AI application in higher education, everything. I mean, it's the first technology in the history of humanity that has applicability and usefulness in everything, without exception, in every domain of life and work. How is the AI transforming human resources, and what are the best approaches for gradual implementation? Well, I'm not sure if the question is about human resources at the business school or at the university or human resources at work. There is an enormous conversation about workforce redesign and workforce planning and talent development in businesses. Again, we do not have all the answers, but it looks like that people are making the same conversations. We need to train people. We need to bring in. We need everybody to have those new skills, and we need to level up the work of everybody so that everybody is a proficient expert supervisor of the technology, but also a meta manager, a meta orchestrator of AI agents. In the era of AI, should our focus be more on teaching or on motivating students to learn independently? Both, both. We should focus on designing the learning experience and also motivating um, our our students not only to learn independently, to learn how to critically use this technology and how to benefit from that technology in a critical way, to not take the first answer of the AI as the final answer, but to probe over and over. Is AI threatening or diminishing the quality of business education? It is up to us. That's my opinion. It is up to us whether we let the technology sort of make us irrelevant or we stay ahead of the curve, we ride the wave, and we innovate and we raise the level of our work with the technology, as we have done many times in the past, online learning, Zoom learning, and so on. Yes, we can have this conversation. How can we prepare academic and administrative staff to effectively use AI tools on operational level? Training, but we also need an institutional environment where experimentation is encouraged, supported, but we also need a top-down vision strategy for Gen AI and some investments depending on the resources that we have at our disposal. But it's a big deal and it requires bottom-up initiative, experimentation. This is how innovation happens, and also top-down vision, direction, and strategy. How will the preferences and behaviors of different generations toward digital platforms evolve over time? They will. We don't know exactly how, but in the same way that we today, or for years, we have been speaking of the digital natives, and the digital natives have a different relationship with technology than my generation, definitely, but also some younger generations. We will be speaking of AI natives. Okay, and those AI natives will create entirely different organizations and institutions, probably, perhaps, I don't know, unrecognizable in terms of what we take for granted. Is the use of AI in academic research papers or book chapters acceptable? So most journals and editorial teams have very explicit guidelines. I would say that what we write and what we do must be ours and ours only. And we humans have responsibility for everything that gets published and accountability for it. But the tool is extremely powerful in literature search, in discovering relevant theories, in testing our ideas, in learning new methodologies and tools and statistical methods in all kinds of ways. And I'm happy to have this conversation with you based on my own experience and the experience of the colleagues I work with. Is there a risk that, so more philosophical questions, there is that AI could become fully rational decision maker, potentially disregarding human emotion, values, and ethical considerations? It is not something, it is not a development that it is currently visible, but it's a development that we can perhaps imagine happening in the sort of more distant future. It is not determined that it will happen that way. So it is a global responsibility, both of the billionaires who develop the technology, but also the governments, the intergovernmental institutions, and us, to the extent that, at universities we have a lot of influence to contribute to steering the technology in a desirable direction. How does the use of artificial technology impact energy consumption? So energy and water consumption are, AI is a disaster. Every prompt is lots of bottles of water, large prompts are gallons of water. The environmental impact is stupendous. Fortunately, the improvement of algorithms, making more efficient algorithms, progresses at least as fast as the adoption of AI. So at the same, while we need more and more energy, we're also significantly reducing the unit of energy that we need per token, let's say. Okay. Also, AI is helping us with developing new sources or optimizing new alternative sources of energy. So hopefully, this will be temporary problem and without significant long-term consequences, but it is a massive conversation, and it should make us think that we should not be using the large language models for everything and anything. We should selectively use different tools depending on the tasks that we have at hand, because different tools are likely to be more efficient than the very large language models like ChatGPT and those. Okay, and finally, just to remind everybody that we have scheduled the next tech seminar for the 20th of November, 20th and 21st of November in Bled. And as I said, we want to make it a co-learning experience where everybody will contribute their experience. And we're planning to develop a very exciting program for that. And I hope to see all of you there. I took too much time, and I hope I gave enough food for thought, and I'd like to hear everybody's reactions.
Great, thank you so much. So if we have any questions now from anyone, you can ask your questions, and then we'll start discussion.
I have a question, if I can.
Of course.
Ask. So you mentioned in the beginning that the deans are more optimistic about using artificial intelligence than faculty.
Yes.
Can you just go a little bit in more details why it is happening like that?
That's a very good question. I don't have the answer. It's a survey that was published a while ago, and I have to find the source again. I can only guess what may be hiding behind this survey finding. That's why I put it in a question mark. Because yeah, I'm guessing that deans being somewhat more or less distanced from the routine of teaching, perhaps they're more hopeful, or maybe they don't have a clear view of the kind of the kind of investment that is required. So I'm equally skeptical about this finding. Yes. Instructors, we know, if you're teaching, you're exasperated because suddenly many of the assessment tools that we had are not reliable any longer. Students can pretend that they're learning, and they may not necessarily be learning. And so there is a lot of burden on us initially to defend against these developments, but then to try and figure out how to redesign pretty much everything that we do, which is a very tall order. And it's doable, but we need that kind of institutional support in a number of ways. So and I can expand on that if you want.
One short comment on this. I think this is a lifetime opportunity to be actually equalized in the classroom or in the place where we are learning as co-learners. So the traditional concept of being student and being a teacher is now actually disappearing. So I see it as a huge opportunity to be co-learners and then to take this opportunity together as joint investment in the new way of learning. So if we can develop such culture on institutional level, then it will be helpful. If we stay in our traditional roles, it will not go fast enough.
Absolutely. This is why I think this is something that in the CEEMAN community we have discussed many times. um, um, we are not the source of all expertise any longer, but again, this technology is forcing us to become the orchestrators of the dynamics of the group and of the learning experience of our students. So indeed, and we have as much to learn from our students as well. But our responsibility now is to design the learning experience as conductors, as orchestrators.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, please. Thank you. It's Maria Kanjere from South Africa, Teflop Graduate School of Leadership. My question is in relation with AI policies. Do you have some guidelines that you could share? Since AI is forever, evolving, what type of policies or information could be put in place when developing AI policies? Thank you.
Yes, well, there is quite a lot of experience on this front now because every university more or less has implemented a set of policies. And even though I haven't done like a comprehensive survey, my understanding working with colleagues and different universities is that whereas initially we had a very strict reaction to ban AI, increasingly every university is adopting a more flexible approach. Flexible in two ways. Flexible, first and foremost, in terms of giving significant degrees of freedom to every instructor to modify the policy and expectation in different courses. I think this is very important. Now, given that, of course, there are some global rules that have to do with the fact that whatever work students are producing must be theirs, and there must be transparency in the way that they use AI. These are the two most important principles. Now, the way different universities operationalize that differs. In my school, we have a general policy, which is part of the student handbook, and then we allow every professor to sort of make their own rules within that policy in their course outlines. And I have seen variations of that model appearing elsewhere, in the UK in particular, where I have more work relationships. Now, the best way to discover what is the sort of different practices is to go to ChatGPT or Gemini and conduct a deep research on this subject. And this is how I would go about figuring out what is the latest. I did that very early on in 2003, but I haven't really done it since, and a lot of things have changed. I'm sorry, I haven't given you a very concrete answer. What I can do is I can share the policies that we have here at ALBA, and I can tell you what I do in my course. In my course, I give students, because I teach technology courses, so that makes a difference. I always create a custom GPT with all the course material, and so students can email me with their queries, but they can ask the AI to have their questions answered. And then in terms of assignments, I tell them that I expect them to use AI. AI is mandatory. I have 10 rules they need to follow, and 20% of the assignment grade goes to a reflection report, which must provide transparency and critical evaluation of how they used AI. And among other things, they have to be very clear about what was their own contribution above and beyond what they got out of the AI. And 20% of the assignment grade goes into the quality of that reflection. Again, this is an experiment. I have been doing this for 2 years now, almost 2 years, and I still consider it an experiment. And every time I modify the particulars a little bit.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? we did not touch upon maybe.
Would you like to share? I would like to hear what you have tried, or what difficulties or opportunities, or what achievements you have made with AI.
Probably I must just say that I'm quite impressed and greatly appreciating the presentation. And I guess in our institution, to a certain extent, we were not that flexible in embracing AI. And especially in relation to the assessments, viewing ChatGPT generated material to a certain extent in line with plagiarism. So, yeah, but then this has given us an insight that we shouldn't completely reject AI, but then we need to probably up our game. And I like what you have just shared, to say use a certain percentage, but then again be transparent in relation to the contribution that you have made. So in that way, will assist students to develop critical thinking. And I guess to a certain extent, probably on a smaller cases, I will adopt that. Thank you.
Yes, I can say more about that. So, for example, my university is a private non-profit university. All the public universities in Greece that I at least know of, haven't heard news from everyone, they have banned assignments, individual assignments, or home assignments, or group assignments of that kind. They have gone back to doing supervised examinations. Okay, so their solution was like a blanket banning of this kind of work. This is not productive and not sustainable. It is perhaps a temporary measure to maintain the credibility of the system. Now, so one way to think about it is what the experiments that I'm doing, which I shared. Another way to think about it is we should be offering mandatory courses, workshops, okay, to all our students on how to make the best out of AI for their studies, but also for their own use or their own work. We want to help our students also raise their ability to use this technology effectively. So, for example, in my school, we have enhanced the workshops that we always have been doing on writing and presentation skills. So we teach our students how to do academic writing, effective communication, and effective presentation. So we have extended this to include appropriate use of AI in assignments. In my opinion, that's important, but very, very inadequate. We need to teach them the power of the tool and how to do amazing things with this tool. So we need to dedicate hours, lots of hours, to do that. It could be for credit, it could be not for credit, doesn't matter. This is a secondary question. But let me remind you, if you've been around a while, in the business school, for example, years ago, we had mandatory courses on using Excel. Yes. And then we gave up. We don't teach Excel anymore because we assume everybody knows Excel or can easily learn Excel by going on YouTube or whatever. Okay. So I think we are at a similar, even in previous decades, in earlier decades, we had courses teaching people how to use the internet, the browser, even more crazy. It seems to us crazy today, right? But we are at a similar moment today. We're at a moment we have an extremely disruptive technology, and this technology will become commoditized very soon. Very soon, it will be second nature, like picking up the telephone and making a phone call. Okay, But until that happens, we need to teach our students the skill. And so if we teach them how to do amazing things with technology, maybe most of them will not use it to pretend that they cheat or pretend they're learning, because they will, students, in the end of the day, if we make learning worthwhile, they enjoy it and they will want to participate in that. I can give you another hint. So as I said, I do custom GPTs for my courses, the course material, etc. I do something else for my children and my nephews. They're in high school. And so, by and large, they're good students, pupils at school, but in some courses, they are left behind and they're not doing so well. So what I do is I created a personalized custom GPT tutor/revision tool. And so this morning, actually, my cousin called me up and she was telling me that her son, my nephew, did use a custom GPT that I created to help him revise and catch up with I think it was a chemistry course that he had fell behind. And he did well at the exam. So there you go. But that's personalized tutoring. And it seems to be working very well. And I have had exactly the same experience with my son. Yeah. And my nephew is in Greece. My son is in the UK. So it works across education systems.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I wanted to kind of go back and touch upon the previous questions. If anybody else would like to share the challenges that you have encountered, maybe while teaching or anything else, as I guess we discussed plagiarism, that might be a challenge for some.
The bigger challenge for me, and I'm working hard on it, but it doesn't happen from one day to the next, is I want to reinvent my teaching altogether. First of all, I have to reinvent the content of what I teach, which is fine. It's part and parcel of my job, has always been. But the challenge now is the best way for my students to learn what I want them to learn is not me to tell them. It's something else. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Okay. And so this is my stressor, my challenge. For example, for many years now, I've been teaching, I've been using simulations in my teaching. Change management simulations, enterprise coordination simulations, lots of them. Very effective, always worked very well. And I continue using them. But it is clear to me that now with Gen AI, I can do a lot more. And this is, and I haven't cracked this problem yet. I still have to spend time on this to figure it out. And I think this is the greatest opportunity. Yeah.
Can I just quickly ask a question? When I use AI for mostly administrative work or just to analyze, let's say, some documents, how do I, what I need to do to kind of minimize the hallucinations, because it sometimes distracts a lot and it starts adding some information that it knows, but not necessarily what I need from it.
Yes.
Are there any AI tools for that?
Yeah. So there are many ways to go about that. First of all, using the right tool. Like if you're using ChatGPT, sometimes it's best to use the 4.0 or the 0.1 or the 0.3 or so on. So that's one. And again, for example, Claude, in my experience, is a lot better with language. and it's a lot better with translations, at least in Greek. So going from one tool to the other is one thing. More importantly, we should be relying on the generic tools less, and we should be building our custom tools gradually, one way or another. What does that mean? That means that either we're using, I don't know, you upload the relevant documents that you have on the conversation that you have with ChatGPT, or I use ChatGPT a lot in my personal academic work, and I have lots of custom GPTs or lots of projects in ChatGPT where I upload a lot of the relevant documentation. And so all the conversations then for different jobs or different projects are much more customized. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because we don't have a school-wide infrastructure. So ideally, we would have something like Microsoft Copilot, the Copilot Studio, where the school will upload there all the policies, the student handbooks, the calendars, the rules, all of that documentation will be in the AI system, and the AI system will always can be actually forced via those custom tools. You can force the AI not to look up its own knowledge, but to always exclusively look up that source of knowledge. The term that you probably have heard is RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So this is the way that we're headed towards. We're headed towards a world where we have AI agents, AI tools that are customized for different tasks and projects. And they are trained in this way by simply uploading the relevant documentation. They are trained to focus on a particular body of knowledge.
So we also have a question in the chat box. I will read it out. It says, would it be possible to comment on the relationship between AI and the copyright? Who owns copyright in work created by AI?
That's a good question. I do not have the latest updates on that, so I will tell you what I think, but don't take my word for granted. The big large language models have made tremendous efforts not to plagiarize copyrighted work any longer. They did it at the beginning, and that's how they became so powerful. But now they have all kinds of controls to prevent that from happening. So when we create something with AI, it is our copyright, and the logic behind that is that every prompt produces a different output. Even the same prompt twice produces a different output. So there is a degree of uniqueness. Now, that degree of uniqueness is not, it's still, it still relies on prior knowledge of other copyrighted work. But nowadays, every AI tool will refuse and will actively try to avoid copying text, images, even the style of someone. Okay, so if you try now a prompt that says create, I don't know, an image of, I don't know, two children playing in the courtyard in the style of, I don't know, Picasso, then it will tell you I cannot do that. I will create that image in an expressionist style. But I expect things to evolve, especially in the direction of creating a kind of protocols, technology protocols, to attribute the source of a new creation to prior work. Now, on the risks of Gen AI systems in terms of bias and fairness, yes, enormous risks, requires a lot of attention, the more, and a lot of testing. So I was saying earlier that it's perhaps worthwhile talking about the kind of resources that we need. Okay, so if you're a dean or if you're talking to your dean, you need to have access to tools. Okay, so the school needs to buy subscriptions in one tool or the other, or Microsoft or something. Okay, that's one. Second, you need to have a small team of people that can provide technical advice to the faculty. And you need to encourage faculty to sort of do their own thing. Eventually, all of us, we will start using AI the same way that we use PowerPoint, okay? But until we get there, we need some coaching and guidance and support from tech people, okay? So that's number two. Number three is that we need someone or a small team of people dedicated to quality control, okay? People that know how to detect problems of hallucination, bias, and fairness and other problems, and they can develop with us, and with the help of AI, of course, the right tests to evaluate what we're creating to make sure that we minimize those risks. So this will remain a problem. This will remain a problem, and we have to learn to live with it. We have to learn to test and to critically evaluate, both as designers of learning, AI-enabled learning experience, and also as users of AI, we need to learn to be critical about it. There is an interesting sort of label that I have discovered. Some people said that we are moving towards a stochastic mindset, okay? So for decades, we have been using deterministic tools, algorithmic tools. 1 + 1 always equals 2. Now with Gen AI and with quantum computing, 1 + 1 does not necessarily always equal 2, right? Sometimes that's desirable. When you want to be creative and innovative, you do not want 1 + 1 to equal 2. You want it to equal something you have never seen before. But if you want to deal with current reality, to solve a tangible problem, then you want to make sure that 1 + 1 does always equal 2, okay? So coming to terms with the fact that sometimes 1 + 1 will be equal to 2 and sometimes it won't, is this stochastic mindset, the non-algorithmic mindset that we all eventually need to embrace in order to take advantage of it and also guard against those problems.
I wanted to make also another comment about AI. So what I had noticed was that I use it a lot for just to feed my curiosity. So I will be around outside and be like, okay, so hi ChatGPT, how was this lake created, or things like that. So I use it a lot for just asking questions. And because I would be outside running around and not really have so much time to go too much deep, I would always say, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And then after some time, I would use it at work and realize that it's giving me the simplest answers possible. And I didn't know why. I was like, why is this happening? You know, I'm asking you such a, work related or like something important. And it just goes, look, Nara, like very, simply put. Then I read this, that usually whatever this, however prompts you give, it kind of takes all of this information and then
yes.
gives you, so that was an interesting.
So ChatGPT specifically tries to learn who you are, and it creates a kind of, it does a profiling of the user, but you can go into the settings and you can find where it says memory, and it's the memory of who I am, and you can actually see the various statements that it has retained and is using to respond to you. You can go back and delete them selectively, or you can delete all of them if you want.
Yeah, I should delete that 5-year-old.
You should delete that 5-year-old. Yeah. And the other thing, which I think is important, is look, if you're using ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, they have similar tools. Use projects to do your work. Okay, so there's this structural thing called the project, and the project is made. A project is a collection of interactions, a collection of chats. That's what it is. So it's literally, I have a project to, to design this course. That's a project. I have a project to do a seminar with CEEMAN. That's another one. And I have lots of chats in there. The project structure also accepts a bunch of files that you can upload. So you can upload research papers, documents of any kind, catalogs, stuff like that. And it will always retrieve information from there. And you can input a prompt, the instructions, how ChatGPT should behave when you work inside this project. And this can be a very long prompt, complex prompt, which of course you don't create entirely yourself. You give the broad idea to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to create that prompt for you. And it will create a very long structured prompt how to deal with it. And then of course you can edit it, you can improve it. So you can have projects, help me, you can have a project, help me come up with new bedtime stories for my baby daughter. Okay, that's one project, and you need baby stories. And then help me create a presentation for my dean or CEO, which is a different kind of interaction. Okay, and you can do both with ChatGPT inside different projects, so different custom GPTs. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I think it is time for us to wrap up. I would like to thank everyone for being here, for participating. I would like to thank Nikos for the great presentation and all of this information that we received. I will make sure to, since we have the recording, I will make sure to send an email to everybody afterwards with anything that Nikos may provide me about the guidelines, the recording of today's session, and also information about EdTech. So if you would be interested, you can get more information and always reach out to us. So thank you all so much, and we would love to see you next month on a different topic.